Okay, thank you. We didn't have animals there as well, right?
No animals.
Okay, that's good to know. And you talked about transparency. I just want to make sure you had several designations, expert designations and reports in this case, correct?
Yes.
And in not one of them did you disclose that you had dinner and drinks at Mr. Depp's house for 3 to 4 hours with Mr. Waldman, Mr. Chu, and Ms. Vasquez. Is that correct?
Ms. Bredehoff, you're mischaracterizing.
Of your reports,
I did not
correct?
disclose that I was interviewed, as that's standard procedure.
But it's true that you have never gone to a client's house to be interviewed for an expert.
Client celebrity status.
All right. And you talked to Mr. Depp for 3 to 4 hours before taking on the role of assessing Ms. Heard and deciding whether she was suffering from any distress, correct?
I did not talk to Mr. Depp. I was talking to his legal team, and he was there to observe.
He was present for the 3 to 4
Yes.
hours. And are you saying now he just stayed silent and said nothing all day?
I don't recall what he didn't or didn't do. I was answering questions.
Amber Heard suffers from PTSD currently, is that correct?
Yes, I was tasked with conducting an evaluation to determine
Dr.
Ms.
Curry,
Heard's mental
we're all on
status.
very, very strict time limitations
Okay.
because we've promised to get this case to the jury. So I'd really appreciate if you just answer my question rather than trying to go further,
Sure.
okay? Thank you very much. Now, after you had the dinner, you then provided a designation in February of 2021 in which you said, and this is long before you ever saw Amber Heard, correct? You said that Amber Heard, quote, exhibits patterns of behavior that are consistent with especially borderline, end of quote, correct?
No,
No, we went through this before.
we did.
But, and that was on the designation, was it not?
I told you last time that I did not write that.
Okay, and you don't know who did on the legal team, correct?
No.
Okay, and then I also asked you, if you may recall, whether you listened to the audio recording in which Mr. Depp taunted Amber Heard that she had a borderline personality disorder. Do you recall that?
I recall you asking me that, yes.
Did you recall listening to that audio tape?
I don't recall Mr. Depp taunting Ms. Heard. I do recall that he at some point suggested she might have that diagnosis.
Okay, and that was back in these audio tapes back when they were together, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you've never before been asked to testify or serve as an expert with respect to someone who has bipolar disorder, correct?
No, as I previously stated, that's not true.
All right. Let's get you to that position. My extra copies were all distributed before. Does everybody have those?
Not up here anymore.
Okay, then my apologies, but I'm going to go ahead.
Your Honor, can we approach?
All right.
Yes.
And you were under oath at that time, correct?
Yes.
And the question I just showed you on page 207, line 5, have you ever been asked to testify or serve as an expert with respect to whether someone has bipolar disorder? And your answer at that time was no, correct?
Yes, I had forgotten that case.
Okay. And have you ever been asked to testify whether anyone has behavioral or characterological conduct that suggests they may be an IPV perpetrator?
I may have. It's difficult. After about 250 cases, it's difficult to remember specifically.
All right. And have you ever been qualified as an expert in the area of IPV?
No.
And have you
domestic
abuse or violence?
Yes, that's been a component of testimony.
All right.
Can I take a look? You want? Okay.
Line 16 of page 207, have you ever been qualified as an expert in the area of IPV? Your answer on line 20 was no, under oath, correct? Then the next question, have you ever been qualified to testify as an expert in domestic abuse or violence? And goes into page 208, line 4. The answer then under oath was no. Now, you would agree that the literature is quite clear that trauma-based symptoms such as PTSD or complex PTSD have symptoms that overlap with borderline personality disorder and histrionic personality disorder, yes?
Yes.
Okay. And you would agree that it's important to use valid and reliable measures for an accurate diagnosis, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. You chose, however, not to administer the structured clinical interview for DSM-5 personality disorders, the SKID. Is that correct?
I did.
Okay. Clinical interview
With it. Not in this setting.
You don't agree with that?
I do not.
And you don't agree that that is the gold standard assessment for reliable, accurate psychiatric diagnosis?
It's a good one, but for treatment settings especially.
Okay. Now, did Ms. Hurd, you said you talked about, you read all of the treatment records, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall reading the treatment records for the psychologist Bonnie Jacobs, who saw Amber Heard over 5 years?
I do.
And did you see anything in Bonnie Jacobs' notes over 5 years in which she diagnosed Ms. Heard with borderline personality or histrionic personality disorder?
No.
Now, you also saw the notes of Dr. Connell Cohen, correct? Mm-hmm. And you even attended his deposition, correct?
Yes.
All right. And he saw Amber for roughly 2 years. He was part of the Dr. Kipper connection,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
Correct? Okay. And did you see anything in Dr. Cowan's notes, and did he say in his deposition that he diagnosed Amber Heard with borderline personality disorder or histrionic personality disorder?
I saw the symptoms clearly delineated throughout his notes and in his deposition. He does not use diagnoses, so he would not have diagnosed. And he also specifically stated that he does not use diagnoses.
All right. And you also have seen Dr. Banks, Dr. Amy Banks, the psychiatrist, her deposition, correct?
Yes.
And did Dr.
Not her
Anderson,
deposition. I reviewed her notes in the transcript.
all right. Did Dr. Anderson diagnose Ms. Heard with borderline personality disorder or histrionic personality disorder?
I don't believe she provided any diagnosis since she was a couples therapist.
All right. Now, you've said quite a bit about Don Hughes, but do you remember how many years of experience Don Hughes has in IPV and domestic abuse and violence?
I know it's quite a bit.
Extensive. And she is board certified, correct?
Yes, she is.
All right. And she spent 29 hours of examination with Amber Heard. Did she not? And she and Conan Cowell, correct?
Yes.
And she also interviewed Amber's late mother.
Yes.
Okay, and she administered 12 different tests over the period of that time, correct?
Well, as I said, the majority of those were checklists, which are inappropriate for the forensic setting.
I understand that's what you say, but she administered 12 different tests, correct?
If you want to qualify them as tests, sure.
Okay. And so you disregard, no, I'm not even going to say that. Okay. Let's go to the CAPS-5 and PTSD. Now, you assessed Ms. Heard's traumas in her life, correct?
Yes, I did
Okay.
give her an instrument to assess for any trauma exposure throughout the entire lifespan.
Yes, it's fine. And you wrote that Ms. Heard's exposure to a traumatic event, namely one of the sexual assaults by Mr. Depp, more than satisfied this requirement. Did you not write that in your notes?
That is not what I wrote in my notes. Do you have my notes? So we
And
can
you
look at them?
administered a structured clinical interview based on that trauma, correct?
Not exactly. It's not quite right.
Okay. Now, Dr. Hughes administered a full intimate partner violence assessment, correct?
That's not a psychological assessment. We can't assess for intimate partner violence. That's an event.
Dr. Hughes administered a full intimate partner violence assessment,
She
correct?
stated that, and that's actually something I'm rebutting today.
Okay, and you reviewed her psychological testing,
I
correct?
sure did, yes.
Okay, and are you aware that in September 2019, Ms. Heard had a trauma-based symptom on many of those valid tests?
Can you be a little bit more specific? Many of those valid tests? Which tests are you talking
Do
about?
you have a recollection of that, September 2019?
She administered all of her testing in September 2019, so I'm not sure which one. Oh, except for the CAPS-5, which was 10 days after mine in 2021.
Now, Dr. Hughes clinically evaluated those symptoms and established that Ms. Heard does have PTSD from the totality of the intimate partner violence by Mr. Depp, correct?
That's what she stated, yes.
Okay. Now, Dr. Anderson's clinical notes that said Amber had come to
Objection, hearsay.
I haven't even asked the question yet, Your Honor.
Are you going to read her notes?
Well, no, actually, I wasn't going to read her notes. I was
Okay.
going to ask a particular question.
Okay.
You talked about danger. Do you recall that in your testimony?
Yes.
All right. Now, if a patient comes to you as a couples therapist with two black eyes, would you assess that there may be a potential danger there?
Sure.
Okay. Did you read Dr. Anderson's notes?
I believe I did.
Now, you administered the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory 2, the MMPI-2. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And you used that to determine whether Amber had PTSD, right? So that test, which, quote, deliberate attempts to mislead are uncommon, end quote. Isn't that correct?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
In the T-score section of that, which assesses deliberate attempts to mislead, do you recall? She scored a 60 on that test, correct?
So there are multiple T-scores for each scale, so I'm not sure which scale you're talking about.
Okay. Well, we can deal with that later. So you would agree that you need to follow ethics and best practices in forensic psychology, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the two primary sources are the American Psychological Association Ethical Principles and Professional Code of Conduct, right? Mm-hmm. And the American Psychological Association's Specialty Guidelines for Forensic Psychology, correct?
Yes.
And Specialty Guidelines 1.02 states that forensic practitioners, quote, strive for accuracy, impartiality, fairness, and independence, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And Specialty Guidelines 1.03 states that you have to avoid a conflict of interest, correct?
Yes.
Now, in addition to not listing the 4 hours you spent with Mr. Depp, Mr. Waldman, Mr. Chu, and Ms. Vasquez, you also did not list that you spent an hour with Dr. Shah, correct?
That's incorrect.
You say that the designation said that you spent
During
an
my
hour-
deposition, I also clarified this. I didn't spend an hour.
But you still didn't disclose it, did you, in your reports?
No.
Okay. Now, you have not been asked to testify about Ms. Heard's behavior in the context of her relationship with Mr. Depp. Is that correct?
I was asked to testify about somebody's behavioral mental status in general, so that can include behavior involved in a relationship with Mr. Depp, but not specifically.
Can you pull up day 10 of the trial testimony at page 2710? Are you able to do that, Michelle? 2710, lines 12 through 18.
May we approach?
All right. We're waiting.
Thank you, Michelle. Great job. Okay, does the witness also have, okay.
Yep.
So, Dr. Curry, this is your testimony from day 10 in this case, and if you can look at page 2710, line 13. Now, my question was, now is it your testimony under oath today that you have not been asked to testify concerning Ms. Heard's behavior in the context of her relationship with Mr. Depp, including any abuse? And your answer under oath to this jury that day was, that's correct.
Yes.
Correct?
I
Okay.
still agree with that question.
All right. And you have not made any determinations, including any opinions, that Ms. Heard abused Mr. Depp or Mr. Depp abused Ms. Heard, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And in fact, you said that's outside the scope.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Of psychology.
And you cannot testify whether Amber Heard suffered any emotional distress as a result of any of the defamatory Mr. Depp made through.
Objection, Your Honor.
Do you want me to read my response?
What's
Sure.
the objection? I'm sorry.
What
Hold on,
okay,
Dr.
sorry,
Curry.
Your Honor.
That's okay. Oh, what's the objection? You want to approach? Okay.
Now, you have not rendered any opinion as to whether Amber Heard exhibits patterns of behavior that would suggest her allegations of abuse against Mr. Depp are false. Would you agree?
No. I mean, yes, I would agree with that.
Thank you. And you have not, no, that's right. That's all I've got. No further questions.
All
Thank
right. Redirect.
You were asked about the skid.
Yes.
What's that?
It's a structured clinical interview. Questions of the examinee and about symptoms. So if you have an examinee who has a tendency to minimize, you're not going to get much information.
Why didn't you use it?
Because, well, first of all, I had a limited amount of time for my evaluation, and I had already had to use, just to complete the interview was extremely time consuming, and I had to even restructure it into handouts so that I could keep Ms. Hurd on track. I determined based on that, so this is where you would make an inference. So because I was having difficulty getting direct answers, my question would be a better use of the time, which it was, and then I further deduced that adding on the structured clinical interview would probably be unproductive, given that I had limited time and needed to use the best, most reliable methods for getting information in that time.
You were asked about the APA specialty guidelines,
Yes.
specifically 1.02 and
Yes.
1.03. Have you complied with them?
I have.
No further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Curry, you can have a seat in the courtroom,
you,
and you're
Your
free to
Honor.
go. Thank you, ma'am. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and take our morning recess for 15 minutes. Do not discuss the case and do not do any outside research, okay? All right. Just for planning purposes, Sammy asked Mr. Tobin to be here as early as noon, just in case with the fluid of the trial. I'm not sure what time we can get to that motion, so. That's fine. Okay, just to let you know. They need to work on that. They're going to find out who the next witness is. So let's go ahead and take a recess until 10:55, okay? All right, thank you. Thank you. Are we ready for the jury?
No, Your Honor, we do have a issue we'd like to raise.
Okay,
with you.
sure. All right, your next witness. I'm sorry, let's get the jury first, right? All right, you ready for the jury? All right, thank you. Are we ready for the next witness, or do you want to
Yes, we call Mr. Depp.
Okay. All right. So just a reminder, you're still under oath, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Depp.
Good morning.
We heard a lot about some statements that Mr. Waldman made. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Could we please pull up Defendants Exhibit 12? And this is already in evidence, so permission to please
Yes.
publish. If we could scroll down to the second page. Mr. Depp, do you see the statement here attributed to Mr. Waldman?
Yes, I do.
When's the first time that you saw this statement?
All right.
We can pull the exhibit back up. Thank you. Mr. Depp, when is the first time that you saw this statement by Mr. Waldman?
The first time that I ever saw this statement was in August. It was when the piece was August 2020, when I was countersued by Ms. Heard. This is the first time that I saw any of these statements.
Can we please pull up Defendants Exhibit 1246? And this is also evidence. If we could scroll down to the second page, or the third perhaps. Thank you. Mr. Depp, do you see the statement that's attributed to Mr. Waldman here?
I do.
And when is the first time that you saw these statements?
Same, when the countersuit was filed.
And could we please go to Defendants Exhibit 1247? And again, this is already in evidence. And if we could scroll down, please, thank you. Mr. Depp, do you see the statement attributed to Mr. Waldman?
I do indeed, yes.
And when's the first time that you saw this statement?
This is the same. It's the counterclaim to August 2020.
After you saw these statements for the first time, did you form an understanding as to where they appeared?
I didn't, as to where they had appeared, these statements.
In what publication?
No, off the bat, I didn't know exactly. It just seemed like a lot of word salad to me. I didn't know where they'd come from, or I mean, where they ended up. Or
Mr. Depp, do you recall Ms. Heard testifying that you did not assist her in getting her role in Aquaman?
yes, I do. Yes.
And what is your response to that? It's not exactly true. Do you know when Ms. Heard first auditioned for Aquaman?
Strange. I was scheduled with my band, the Hollywood Vampires. We had done 2 shows at the Roxy, which is a place in Los Angeles, to rehearse for we were invited to play at the Rock in Rio concert. Miss Heard had wanted to come with me, and Whitney, her sister, had come as well. While we were there in Rio, we were rehearsing and getting ready for the show. Miss Heard informed me that she would have to get back to Los Angeles for an audition, meaning it's basically after our 2-hour show or whatever, we would have to get on the plane immediately to make it back to Los Angeles for this audition. And that audition was at Warner Brothers. It was whatever film it was.
And when were you performing at the Rock in Rio?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that was I believe it was the 24th of September.
In what year?
That was 15.
What do you understand happened after Ms. Heard auditioned for Aquaman?
After Ms. Heard's audition, or possibly auditions, for Warner Brothers and I suppose the creative team, Ms. Heard had expressed to me that the film was going to be, Warner Brothers had said that the film was going to be shooting in Australia. And Australia was for Ms. Heard, that was a potential problem, which...
Objection, Your Honor. We approach.
Okay.
I apologize, Mr. Depp. Could you please continue? What happened after Ms. Heard auditioned for Aquaman?
I was informed by Ms. Heard that the film was going to be shooting in Australia, and that was of concern to her, and because it was of concern to Warner Brothers. So she asked if I would, because I'd had a multi, for a few years I'd had a multi-film deal with Warner Brothers, and so we'd been in business together. So I knew these people. I'd been on films with them. So she asked me if I would speak to them. I made a phone call and I spoke to...
Objection, hearsay, Your Honor.
I don't believe he said anything. I think he was going to say who he spoke to.
All right, we'll see. Overruled at this point.
I spoke to executives, Kevin Sujihara, Sue Kroll, and Greg Silverstein. And I told them that...
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
All right, I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
What was the result of you speaking with those individuals?
Well, I can only say that ultimately she did get the job in the film. So hopefully I suppose I had curbed their worries to some degree.
Mr. Depp, do you recall Ms. Heard testifying that she saw you consume 8 to 10 MDMA pills while you were in Australia in March of 2015?
Yes, I do remember that.
How
I
many?
also remember her saying that I took a handful.
Objection beyond the scope. Question.
Sorry, that was extra
All
residue.
right, I'll sustain the objection. Next question.
How many times have you done MDMA in your life, Mr. Depp?
Actually, not that many times. I would say in my lifetime, MDMA 6, 7, maybe.
And how much MDMA have you done on those occasions?
Not enough to properly. Well, not enough to properly experience what the chemicals are supposed to do to you.
Have you ever consumed 8 to 10 MDMA pills at once?
No, ma'am. No, I have not.
And why is that?
Because I'd be dead. I'm pretty sure I'd be dead. I think one would die. Yes, and probably rather quickly.
Mr. Depp, I'd like to show you some pictures from the home in Australia that Ms. Heard testified about.
Sure.
Could we please pull up Defendants Exhibit 1817, which is already in evidence? Mr. Depp, do you recognize what's depicted in this photograph?
Yes, I do. That's the downstairs bar of the house we rented in Australia.
And can you please show the jury where you were sitting when Ms. Heard threw the 2 vodka bottles at you?
This chair, that one here, was over here. And it was in pretty much when I was turned around they were on a swivel, so when I was turned around towards the bar, I'm facing the bar. When I turned around this way, this chair here was in pretty much exactly this same position as this chair. It was when I was facing Miss Heard, who was, let's say she was, if you're looking at the photograph, she would be about here.
Could you draw a line in the direction where Miss Heard was relative to where you were sitting?
Yes, absolutely. So if I'm sitting here, she was over here, back here.
Approximately how far away from Miss Heard, from you was Miss Heard, if you can recall?
I would say it was probably 10, 12, 15 feet, maybe 10 feet, 12 feet.
And approximately where was your hand when the vodka bottle hit it?
It was leaning. My arm was leaning on the marble bar, right there where the imaginary seat is, and leaning, kind of just leaning back and looking at Miss Heard. She just walked away with the second bottle. She walked this way when she threw the first bottle, which is actually visible in the background on the floor.
Yeah. Could you please circle where the first bottle is?
Oh, sorry, excuse me. Yeah. All that is the exploded first bottle that went past my. The second bottle hit right up here where my hand was resting on the marble bar.
Can we please pull up Defendants Exhibit 1820? Mr. Depp, do you recognize what's depicted in this photograph?
This is behind that very bar.
And what do you see on the floor in this picture?
I see what looks to me like some kind of napkin. It looks sullied, soiled, blood, I don't know. And I see glass in the corner, blood obviously on the floor, and a towel leaning up on something.
Do you know how that bloody tissue got on the floor?
My best guess.
Objection calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Do you know how the blood got on the floor, Mr. Depp?
I know how the blood got on the floor. It came from my dripping finger. So that's why the tissue is I'm 99.9% sure, since it is, looks like it's got blood on it as well, is what I held my finger with.
Do you see the wall on the left side of the photograph?
I do.
Was there a wall-mounted phone on that wall?
On the left side of the photo? No, I didn't. No. Not that I recall, no.
Could we please pull up Defendants Exhibit 394, which is already in evidence?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Depp, do you recognize this text message?
I do.
And what is this message?
It's a text to Dr. Kipper. Through. Yeah, this is my text to Dr. Kipper, who had just happened to be in town, telling him that I've had it and that I've just lost a fingertip.
How long after your finger had been injured did you send this text message, if you can recall?
It's hard to tell because when I look at the timestamp, it says delivered 3/7/2015, 5 o'clock. But I know that because of Australia time, it was the 8th, and it was probably, this was the whole thing lasted probably until about 2 p.m. Or so, excuse me.
So do you have an estimate as to how long after your finger had actually been injured that you sent this message?
I don't think it was very long. I think it was probably within the next, I'm sure it was in the next half hour or so. I would have had to sneak into a bathroom, lock myself in to type this out.
And how were you able to send this text message to Dr. Kipper in the state that you were in?
Well, he wasn't available at the time, so just sort of thumb your way through, don't you?
How long after sending this text message did you see Dr. Kipper?
I don't recall it. I think it took them probably 30 minutes or more, 30 to 40 minutes to get there.
And what did Dr. Kipper do when he first arrived at the home?
Oh, the first thing he wanted to do was inspect the damage of my finger and try and figure out exactly what had happened, how it happened.
And what did you tell Dr. Kipper about how your finger had been injured?
Objection, Your Honor.
May we approach?
Hearsay.
All
We've
right,
discussed
that's
this
fine.
several times.
Let's go.
told him that there was obviously, I mean, when you saw the damage in the house and everything, and the blood everywhere, I mean, obviously there was serious damage done. There would be no point in lying to the man. He'd been through it with me and Ms. Herb before. I told him that she had thrown a bottle of vodka and smashed and cut my finger off, the tip of my finger, but a good chunk. I miss it.
Mr. Depp, you heard Ms. Heard testify about an alleged incident of abuse on your honeymoon. Do you remember that?
I remember her testifying to that, yes.
And when did you and Ms. Heard go on your honeymoon together?
I believe it was somewhere in the neighborhood of August, because I just finished the film. Maybe end of July, August. I'm not quite good on the exact date.
Do you recall the year?
It was 2015, I believe.
And where did you and Ms. Heard go on your honeymoon?
We took the Orient Express from Bangkok, Thailand to Singapore.
And what happened while you and Ms. Heard were together on the Orient Express?
There were times when it was very agreeable, very nice. And then there were times when something had become dissatisfactory for her, and she would start the rant, the blooming of a fight would be on deck there, and at one point it didn't. I mean, I don't remember it lasting long at all. I just remember that I took a pretty good shot to the face, to the eye, to somewhere up here. So I had a bit of a shiner. But it all ended, and then everything got fine again, and we'd go to dinner, and it was all fine.
Did Ms. Heard ever apologize to you for giving you the shiner?
I don't recall.
Can we please pull up Plaintiff's Exhibit 162, which is already in evidence? Mr. Depp, do you recognize this photograph?
I do. It was with the chef and the maitre d' and the staff were asking if they could take a photo with us, and they'd been very kind. They'd given us a private dinner card.
So where was this photograph taken?
That was in the, that looks like it's in the, yes, that's towards the back of the Orient Express. That's in the back train bar compartment. And just out back, you could smoke on the sort of caboose or whatever.
And what, if any, injuries do you have in this photograph?
I think the eye's a little bit bugged out, if you will. It's, yeah.
How did that happen?
These things could happen very quickly if you disagreed.
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive. She just asked, how did that happen?
I believe he was about to explain.
Well, I'll sustain the objection.
Okay. So, Mr. Depp, specifically, how did the injury in this photograph occur?
I'm sure it hit. Is that better?
Reflect what you looked like on that date?
I don't look at myself much, but it certainly looks like me with a black eye. Yeah.
Does this picture appear to have been photoshopped in any way?
No, no. I think it would be difficult to photograph or to start getting into sort of digital processing with a number of people in the shot, especially in a wide shot.
Could we please pull up Plaintiff's Exhibit 1301? And this is a new one, Your Honor, so this is not in evidence.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Depp, do you recognize what's reflected in this photograph?
Yes, this is the staff. It's the manager and his staff at the Raffles Hotel in Singapore. And before we left, they asked if they could take a photograph with us.
And when was this photograph taken?
Well, that would have been, we were off the Orient Express. We stayed in Raffles, I believe, a couple of days, few days. And then from there we flew to San Francisco.
So this photograph was taken after the photograph we just looked at?
This photograph was taken after the photograph in the dining car of the train, yes.
Your Honor, I'd move Plaintiff's Exhibit 1301 into evidence.
Objection?
Over.
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, 1301 is in evidence, can be published to the jury.
Mr. Depp, what, if any, injuries do you see on your face in this photograph?
I see pretty much the same. I see swollen and yeah, there's a bit of a shiner there.
Thank you. We can take this down. Mr. Depp, do you recall Ms. Heard testifying that she punched you in the staircase incident because she thought of Kate Moss in the stairs?
Do I remember her saying that?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, I do.
Do you have any understanding as to what Ms. Heard was referring to?
Yes, I do.
And
As Kate Moss, Kate testified, it was many, many years ago. And exactly what happened is what she said happened. I recall speaking with Ms. Heard about that very incident because of the downpouring of rain, because it was raining very heavily that day that Kate slipped. And I recalled the story to her.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
may we approach Your Honor?
Okay.
Please continue, Mr. Depp. What did you tell Ms. Heard about the staircase, or Kate Moss?
I'll make it easy for Mr. Rottenborn. Miss Heard took the story and turned it into a very ugly incident, all in her mind. There was never a moment where I pushed Kate down any set of stairs, yet she's spewed this 3 times before.
Objection, Your Honor. Ms. Heard simply testified that she had heard a rumor, and that's
What's a rumor?
non-responsive to the question.
Sir, hold on. This
Sorry.
objection. I'll overrule the objection.
Misstates the facts and evidence.
I'll overrule the objection.
Sorry, I was drawn by Mr. Rottenborn's voice.
Certainly.
What would you like? What was it?
So what specifically had you actually told Miss Heard about the incident with Miss Moss and the stairs?
Very simply that we were in Jamaica. I had left our bungalow about 3 minutes prior to her. I was standing outside, and suddenly rain starts just coming down like it's, monsoon. And then I remember looking and seeing Kate coming out the door, and there were 3 little wooden stairs, and she slipped, her legs went up, and she landed directly on her coccyx and her lower back. So, and she was obviously physically in pain, and she was hurt, she was crying. So I ran over and grabbed her to make sure she was all right. That's it. That's all I ever. That's the whole story. But then the rumor of it, I'd never heard a rumor of that before Miss Heard grabbed hold of it. It's like that. Sorry.
Mr. Depp, we heard testimony from Miss Heard's sister, Whitney, during this trial. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And how would you describe your relationship with Whitney when you were in a relationship with Miss Heard?
I liked Whitney very much. Initially, when I